What's up everyone, China Cycling here, aka Joe, aka the hydrophobic hovercraft. In my last video about my gravel build, I took you into the Waltly factory where my frame was made and I showed you how to make all their frames. If you missed that video, don't forget to check it out after this one, but in this video, I'm going to be talking through the specifics of my frame, how I designed it, why I designed it that way, how much it cost, how much it weighs, how long it took to make, and all that juicy stuff. I'm also going to be telling you to watch out for what mistakes I made so you can learn from my mistakes. Okay, with no further ado, let's dive in. If you just want an off-the-shelf gravel frame, go talk to Waltly. They have some of their own designs that look as good as anything you'll find anywhere else, and they're cheap too. But to me, the real appeal of working with Waltly is the option to go custom. Now, it's not for the faint-hearted or ill-experienced. You'll have to have a good idea of what kind of numbers you usually like to ride, and for that, I mean the kind of reach and the stack figures of bikes that you're comfortable on. But also things like fork rake and head tube angle, and have a basic understanding of how that's going to affect the handling of your bike. So, the first step is definitely research. What is your custom bike going to be? A road bike, mountain bike, gravel bike? Waltly can make anything from a tandem to a BMX. Your imagination is the only real limitation. For me, I wanted a gravel bike, but also a bike I could ride on the roads if I threw some road wheels on it. If I wanted to do some bike packing, I also wanted no shortage of mounts and options for that. And for bottom brackets, I thought I'd go for a traditional threaded BSA bottom bracket for nostalgia's sake as much as anything. With the goal of this in mind, it was time to start thinking geometry. I think I already had a pretty good idea about road bike geometry, what kind of numbers and angles I liked in a road bike, etc. But gravel was totally new to me. I never ridden a gravel bike and I had no concept of how slack was too slack and things like that. Fortunately, gravel bike riders and gravel bike reviewers love to talk about geometry. Cycling Tips actually did a series of videos earlier in the year when they hauled a whole bunch of gravel bikes out into the sticks and they had a whole bunch of their editors ride them back to back to give their opinions. They were paying attention to the wheels and tires used, so I could be sure their opinions about handling were almost entirely down to geometry differences alone. The vast consensus amongst their editors was that the aluminium version of the Canyon Grail was a great gravel bike for roaders. On the internet, you should never base a purchasing decision off just one source, so I checked with some more reviews and videos about the Canyon Grail, and indeed, that was the general consensus. A really nice handling gravel frame that was forgiving for novices, but still felt fairly lively when being ridden on the roads. The smaller sizes of the Canyon Grail are based around 650B wheels, and being a shorter rider only 1.69 meters tall, I thought I'd go for the same approach. The outer diameter of a 650B 2.1 inch tire is about the same as a 700C 25mm road tire, meaning I could switch between chunky gravel wheels and fast light road wheels without affecting the BB height or the effective trail of the front fork. Having sourced the Canyon Grail's geometry from their website, it was time to jump into BikeCAD. For those that don't know, BikeCAD is awesome. You can spend hours and hours playing around, daydreaming, designing your own dream bike. It's accessible and pretty straightforward to use. There's a pro version, but I just used the free version, but hey, if you're using it a lot, help out the developer and go for the pro version. Anyway, let's have a look what I cooked up. Okay, so here we are now inside of BikeCAD. And yeah, this is what I ended up going for. So, for those that don't know, BikeCAD, you can change the basics of your frame in here. Just type in what you want. You change the numbers here and it updates. So if we go from a 71 degree head tube angle to something like a 78, I don't know why you'd have a 78, and wait a second, yeah. So it updates there. So the first thing I did was just copy all of the numbers from the Canyon Grail geometry chart. So over on the Canyon website, here we go. I decided to go for the XS version because my height is around in here. And so yeah, they have all the information here, that their own chosen seat tube length, the top tube length, all their angles, etc. So first I started off by just putting these values into BikeCAD. And then once the values are in BikeCAD, it's just a matter of personalizing it for yourself. So for the wheels, I actually went for 650B wheels, as I said. So the BSD, the bead seat diameter for a 650B wheel, is 584 millimeters, just from the bead to the bead. And then I actually designed it for 42mm tires in mind. At the time I thought 42 is what I'd go for. I thought it was plenty. So it's designed for 42mm tires. And then so after you have the basic frame in here, it's just a matter of customizing it for yourself. So I know that for me personally, I always have saddles rammed quite far forwards. And so for example, I adjusted the seat tube angle from 73.5 degrees, I think it is on the Canyon. I put it forward to 74 degrees. And again, on this stuff, like, less is more. Very subtle changes will come up with big differences, so don't go too crazy. The head tube angle, 71 degrees. Again, pretty slack, but not so slack that it will feel like not responsive on the road. Again, you have to also know the offset of the fork you're going to be using, because the offset of the fork you're using is super important. That's going to affect your trail value, which is also going to have a big effect on your handling. For trail, I ended up with 68mm with 42mm tires, so that's actually, I'm actually using 47mm tires in the end, so that's actually gone up a bit. But 68mm for me, or 70mm as it is now, probably is fine. If we change this to 47mm tires, let's see what happens to the trail. Yeah, so the trail goes to 69mm. So me going to 47mm tires actually had a tiny effect on the trail, but I think 68, 69, it's pretty similar. Chainstays, they're also going to have a big effect on your handling. Again, do your own research, but I knew with 650B wheels, 415mm chainstays is going to give me really nice handling, but still no problems with clearance for my tires. My bottom bracket height ended up being 275mm. Again, changing to bigger tires afterwards, it's actually a bit higher than that now, but 275mm, maybe I'd go a tiny bit higher. I use shorter cranks, 165s, but I think this is ballpark right. I wouldn't change it too much. Then other decisions are mostly aesthetic decisions. So I wanted an external headset just to be cool. I wanted the frames to look kind of traditional. I was really hoping to get a horizontal top tube, but that would have meant very little seat post sticking out, and so I think it looked not great. So I ended up with this sloping top tube, and once the top tube was sloping and already not traditional, I thought I'd give the seat stays a tiny drop too, because, you know, it's already not traditional, so why not, you know, put some more modern twists on it. And aesthetically, I think it ended up looking quite nice, like a blend of modern and traditional kind of bike design. The head tube is maybe something I'd do differently if I did it again. So I went for an untapered head tube, 40mm top and bottom. Now, it looks amazing. I really like how the finished things look, but it took me so long to find a suitable fork. So obviously a straight head tube, untapered. You also need a straight steerer tube on the fork. And these days it's really hard to find a fork with a straight steerer tube. If you do find a fork with a straight steerer tube, it's probably going to be a traditional fork, only 700C. To find a nice 650B fork with the right offset with a straight steerer tube was super difficult. Luckily, I know a bunch of guys who work in Chinese car manufacturers and was able to trace one down. So crisis averted. But if you want to save yourself a huge headache, either build it with a tapered head tube or just build it with the head tube that is 1.5 inches at the top and the bottom. And so then this is what BikeCAD gives you, and you can turn on more notes, turn on more measurements. And then I sent this to Waltly, and then they came back to me a few days later with their CAD drawing. So after sending the BikeCAD drawing to Waltly, this is what they sent back a few days later. And I think you'll agree, this is just art. Like, I want to print this out and hang it on my wall. This is beautiful. One difference from my drawing you'll notice is this head tube is 100mm. I think in my drawing it was like 103mm or something, but they only do head tubes in round numbers apparently. But yeah, dropping 3mm off the head tube wasn't gonna kill me. Difference between this and the CAD drawing is on this. There's more detail about the frame and the tubing thicknesses. So the thickness of each tube, the diameter of each tube, and also cable routing and things like this. But wow, yeah, and just an absolute beautiful diagram. At first you're overwhelmed with all the numbers and all the lines, but when you start looking at it in more detail, you start making sense of what everything is. So this line here, the 668, is the outer diameter of a 42mm tire. And again here, you can see from above on the seat stays, a 42mm tire will come to here. And they think the maximum clearance it would be for a 62mm tire, theoretically. If we look on the chainstays, again, a 42mm tire would be around here, and theoretically a 56 tire is what would be coming to here. Maybe I shouldn't say a 56mm tire, but we'll say this 56mm of diameter. When tires start getting this big, different pressures are going to affect it a whole bunch, but also rim widths as well. You may be wondering why it says SRAM Force 144 teeth here. Because when your wheels start getting bigger, then your chainstays have to go around the tires. But when your chainstays go around the tires, then you're going to have issues with clearance of your chain ring. So obviously this is looking at the bottom of the bottom bracket here. Essentially the bigger your tires, the smaller your chain ring can be. Now I told Waltly that I was going to be running a single chain rings SRAM Force, so they know the offset of that. And they calculated that, yeah, with this setup here, and with them putting a little bend and a little dent in the chainstay, I'd be able to get away with a 44 tooth chainring. As it works out at the moment, I'm actually only running a 34 tooth, so I have absolutely miles of room to play with. But if ever I want to do some more higher speed stuff, put a bigger chainring on there, it's good to know that I can go up to 44 teeth. Other than that, it was about telling Waltly how heavy I am and what kind of riding I was going to be doing. And with that information, they were able to choose things like tube thickness and tube diameter. And then just a matter of checking over the details of the frame, making sure there's nothing that jumps out at me. All of these extra bosses where I wanted them to be. And then, yeah, give them the green light to go ahead and build it. In hindsight, I'd pull this one down a bit. I think I'd pull these two bosses down about 40mm. So the bottom of the bottom bracket and the bottom of this were just about in line. At the moment, it's a little bit too close to the front tire, but hey, hindsight's a wonderful thing. The frame price was $780 US. I'm not sure what the deal usually is for shipping, as like I said, they're just down the road from me, so I just picked up the frame from the factory. You have to pay a deposit of around half before they start designing the frame for you. Then they'll have some back and forth with you over the design, doing any revisions as necessary. And then when you confirm the drawing, they'll start production. Production takes about 6 weeks, and when it's done, they'll send you a bunch of photos via email. When you pay the remaining balance, they ship the frame to you. They also have a wide selection of good quality forks for around the $120 US range. Unfortunately, all of their forks have tapered steerer tubes, like most modern forks do, but I needed a straight steerer tube to fit my skinny head tube, so I ended up sourcing my own. As they were making the frame, we had some back and forth about logos and finishes. I went for an engraved head tube with the China Cycling logo, which I think looks amazing. For the finish, I went for a blasted titanium with shiny titanium logos. They can also do anodizing and all that fancy rainbow colored jazz, but it really adds to the production time, and I'm not a very patient person. 6 weeks later, I got the finished frame, and wow, absolutely stunning. I have no idea about welding or metalwork, but the welds look really nice. Evenly sized and not too rough looking. She's no ballerina. When I threw her on my usual scales, they claim to be overloaded. Whoops. Switching to another scale showed she weighed 1.79 kilograms. Admittedly, over 150 grams of that is probably the ridiculous amount of screws I added to the design. They are literally everywhere. I ended up switching them all for aluminium screws to save a decent amount of weight and add some bling. I've got to say, I'm very impressed by the quality of the Waltly frame and the service of their staff, namely Amy. She's very patient and friendly and goes above and beyond in arranging everything and keeping you in the loop. The value for money of the frame is pretty ridiculous. A titanium frame that's 100% designed to match your own body for less than $1,000, even including the price of the fork? Titanium may not offer the ultimate performance of carbon, but if you look after it, this frame will be still around long after all of your carbon frames are sitting in landfills. I built the frame up a few months ago now, and I've been riding it about 3 months. I absolutely love it. It's exactly what I wanted. It can go anywhere and do anything. As for titanium's legendary ride quality, I'm still on the fence. I think I personally still prefer the feeling of carbon, but I'll go into that when I give the whole bike a full review in the next video. Make sure you guys are subscribed to the channel and ring that bell so you don't miss that video when it comes out. And please do me a huge favor by clicking the like button below this video. It takes you literally 1 second and costs you nothing. This video took me hours to make, so thank you, thank you, thank you. Anyway, I'll see you guys in the next video. As always, China Cycling out.